So I'm talking about the possibility of, there you are, of impeachment and U.S. politics. Also, I'm going to do an update and on the Sri Lankan terror over the weekend. Also, other current events, follow up to the Paris Notre Dame burnings and other things that we can expect on this video. Okay, so we have the chart here of, this is the current chart, and I wanted to do this as well today because we have a particular, because we have a particular shift here. You see Jupiter has just gone retrograde now back into the sign of Scorpio. So Jupiter has been going back and forth. If I move this forward day, if I move it forward, or I'm sorry, backward, you'll see, watch the longitude of Jupiter here. Even, got it here, boom. So you can see yesterday Jupiter was 02, this was 421, this is now 422. Day before Jupiter was 0.4. This was around the time that the Sri Lanka very sad event happened in Sri Lanka. I don't have the exact time here. Maybe if someone has the exact time for the Sri Lanka, you can post it in the comments. I'll try to do it here. Sri Lanka terror time, and we can pull that up. And but again, this is all part of a lot of the same thing that we've been seeing, of course, with this really difficult transit through this Gandanta point. And I've been talking about this, and I began talking about this in my forecast last year, that this time now would be extremely volatile and transformative, not only with Rahu and Ketu just having moved into the Gemini-Sagittarius axis, but also with this Jupiter hovering on the Gandanta point, which is, of course, as we've already said, very volatile and unpredictable. So this combination of factors have led to a lot of changes in the last several weeks. I would say a lot of it started with the release right on the day of right before Rahu actually went into Gemini. We had the Mueller report released in the U.S., which of course is definitely it's a foreshadowing of what this Rahu in Gemini is all about. And then right after, and then shortly thereafter, and in fact, what that's led to so far is this current debate that's going on, and whether or not we think or anybody thinks that we're going to have impeachment in the U.S. It didn't take long for certain senators and certain people to start saying, we need to have impeachment in the U.S. And again, we can see what's going to happen here. Jupiter being in that sign, he was in the sign of Sagittarius when the actual report was released, not the Bob Barr memo, which again, the Bob Barr memo is William Barr memo was not the Mueller report. That 2 weeks or 3 weeks was really just a time of sort of propaganda a little bit. Now we have the report, and it looks a lot different, and I knew it would. That's why people who were saying exonerated, and kind of spiking the football and saying, see, did nothing wrong. See, it was all a hoax. All a hoax, nothing wrong. It was no, okay. Again, what it shows, particularly in the obstruction area, is 11 categories. It's not 11 events, it's 11 categories of events. You know, there's the Don Jr. Trump Tower category and 5 different things that were questionable. Right? There's the firing Comey category. There's the back off of Michael Flynn category. Again, people should understand that Richard Nixon resigned the presidency because of one statement on one tape, one moment where he understood that the FBI might be used to, or that the CIA might be used to stop the FBI, I believe is what it was. One statement on one tape. He said, okay, let's try to get the CIA to stop the FBI from investigating. That's all it took for the Republicans in Congress to say, all right, you need to resign. That's it. That's all it took. One moment of saying, let's use the CIA to stop the FBI. We've seen Donald Trump get on television and say, I fired Comey to stop that Russia thing. That Russia thing is a hoax, so I fired the FBI director. It's like, when he said that, I think half of the country who understood, who lived through Watergate and whatnot, went, did he just like admit to obstructing justice in front of the whole world? Anyway, that whether people think this or not, that he should be impeached, anyone who knows that what you're looking at, for example. And so the possibility that there's going to be hearings and things like that, these things are certainly going to happen. We're definitely going to have some protracted hearings over the summer. Again, whether or not it's going to lead to impeachment or whatnot, who knows? Who knows? But we're already seeing it, and it's only going to get louder. And I think it's going to get louder because of a sense of what the country sort of, maybe at least many people in the country want to know for sure. Again, one of the things to understand is that the Congress has oversight. And what they can do and what they're going to do is bring the people before the Congress to testify to what they said under oath to Mueller. And people should get that. I think what's going to happen is it's very easy to have an opinion about what we might think should happen now because we just got this report, this quote report, and you can read the report or not read the report. Nobody cares. But what happens when you see these people under oath, especially like Hope Hicks, under oath saying the things that she told Mueller, or Corey Lewandowski under oath saying the things under oath that we already know that she said, or Don McGahn, the lawyer, sitting in front of the world saying, yes, he told me to fire Mueller, and I refused. And having, again, then it's not just some report that you can listen to or not listen to. Then you're seeing it yourself. You're seeing these people stand there and say it out loud, maybe for weeks or months at a time. How is that going to change public opinion? How would that change public opinion? How would that change opinion in the Congress? Again, we had Mitt Romney come out and say it's disgusting. People, if you've read it, I've read quite a bit of it. It's incredible, the level of how much Trump was trying to stop it and to, basically obstruct the investigation. And again, having those hearings in the Senate where you're bringing the people before to testify and state publicly what they said is a whole different ball of wax than what we have now. And by the way, again, whether someone says they mad at me because I don't like Trump, whatever it is, you have to understand, this is what I said, that when Rahu goes through Gemini and Ketu through Sagittarius, we're going to have all this information and these disclosures out there. It's going to be out there then. It's going to be released, and we're going to see for ourselves. It's a whole thing. One thing to say, oh, it's all fake news, or it's all this, or they're all just a witch hunt out to get the president and all this in this kind of abstract way. These are just ideas and these are just opinions. But how does that opinion change when literally Don McGahn sits down and says, and a congressman says something like, so in the Mueller report, you said that on this date, the president phoned you at home and told you to fire Mueller. Is that what happened? Yes. Explain that to us. And then you hear Don McGahn in his own words saying, well, I was sitting home and the phone rang and it was the president telling me to fire Bob Mueller. And I knew I wouldn't do it. And then the congressman will follow up and say, well, how come you wouldn't do it? And then Don McGahn would say, well, because it's probably obstructing justice. It's probably illegal. And they would maybe say something like, well, so why would that prevent you from doing it? And then he would probably say something like, well, because I don't want to go to jail. That would be what he would say. So, I mean, imagine this kind of thing going on. They bring Corey Lewandowski and say, when on this day, Donald Trump told you to tell Jeff Sessions to fire Mueller, right? Or whatever that thing was with Lewandowski. Right. Well, how come you didn't do it? Well, because I don't want to obstruct justice. Why? Well, because I might go to jail. And you have people say this in front of the people, in front of the cameras. People who will have to say it because they've already said it to Mueller. And they're not going to perjure themselves. So this was always the end game for those of us who could see it, at least, that this was leading to a point to where at some point this was going to lead to full disclosure of what has been happening. And that's what that full disclosure looks like. That full disclosure looks like all of this investigative work being done and then coming before the people. Again, whether you like it or not or don't like it is a different issue. What I'm talking about now is the likelihood that this happens. And then let's see how it looks then. So again, I said this several months ago, many times, that when Rahu went into Gemini, we're going to see the truth beyond fake news and this and that. And again, maybe we can see what the Mueller report looks like now, even in the redacted form. But what's it going to be like when it's not just all these words that you can read or not read? You can choose to read it or not read it. But when you see these people come before you for months at a time explaining these things, it's going to look very different. At that point, maybe it'll lead to impeachment. Maybe at that point, 15 Republicans will flip in the Senate, because that's all it needs. They would get 48 already. They need 67. So they need about 20 Republicans in the Senate to flip in order to actually impeach. I'm not saying I want it, by the way. I don't really know. I'm not looking that far, and I know everybody might think that I have this political, desire to see impeachment or whatever. I want what's best for the country, frankly. And after it came out, I said it's probably better that they don't do it. But now thinking about it, the problem is that what we need, and I think what is being demanded of these times, is to see the truth. Again, those who are just going to defend, let's say, Trump no matter what, and again, let's be clear, unlike any other president before, he won't show his taxes. Today in the news, there was a thing about him and his kids are going to fight all the way to the Supreme Court to not see his taxes, which every president has done for 50 years, has shown their taxes, but he's not, and he's going to fight it all the way to the Supreme Court. I mean, we've just gotten used to so much, you can call it corruption, I don't know what you want to call it, but if Trump's your guy, and that's okay with you, that's fine. But for the rest of us who don't, think that it's cool to just do that, we want to see what's in that report. I want to see the people come and say this stuff, because we should know what was going on behind the scenes with the President of the United States trying to obstruct an investigation into what happened in the election. We should see it. And it's very ironic because he was cleared on the initial charges. If he wouldn't have obstructed justice, there would be nothing. If he wouldn't have been trying to stop it the whole time, nothing would have happened. And this would be over. For the most part. Probably. Because the collusion thing, again, whatever that was, they found it didn't rise to an indictable conspiracy. And you don't hear anyone saying much more about that part. But the other part, trying to stop it for the entire time, that's what's open now. So I think what is going to happen is, I don't know whether he'll be impeached or not. I think we're in for a long, protracted process now where they're going to bring Barr, they're going to bring Mueller, they're going to bring Don McGahn, they're going to bring Lewandowski, they're going to bring Hope Hicks, they're going to bring these people who had damning statements and events happen, and they're going to ask them about them, and then we're going to watch as a nation as Don McGahn recalls how Trump tried to have him fire the special prosecutor and all this, and we'll see that. And we'll see how that changes minds. If it changes any minds, let's see. The last thing that it'll wind up doing is it'll wind up getting Republicans on the record. Republicans are going to then have to answer for that. So you think it's okay that this is what happened? You heard Don McGahn say that. Do you think it's okay that that's the way the president acted? Is the president above the law? Because if he wasn't above the law, he would have been indicted like anyone else, probably. There's like 19 indictable offenses if he wasn't president. And the Mueller report said very clearly at the beginning, it's very likely that if he wasn't president, there could have been indictments issued for sure. And I can't clear him on any of these charges. So as far as that goes, I think that's what we're in for. It's ugly. I don't like any of this. I'm not happy about any of it. Those who don't like because I'm saying this because whatever, then that's okay. But I'm going to talk about what I see happening. And this is very much Rahu in Gemini. Rahu in Gemini bringing out the facts. Again, like I said at the beginning when I started talking about this last year, at some point it's all going to come out and it's going to be beyond all the fake news. I say it's fake news. I say it's this. I say it's that. It's very hard to keep all of that fake news story floating when person after person is coming out and saying this is what Trump did. This is what he told me to do. Here's how he told me to obstruct justice. Here's why I didn't do it, because I didn't want to be held accountable for a crime. I didn't want to commit a crime, so I didn't obstruct justice for him or whatever. Again, people that are sworn into public service are sworn to uphold the Constitution, not to do whatever the leader says. And if they carry out orders that are illegal, they are culpable. As long as they know it's illegal. And those who knew certain things are illegal, if they carry out those orders, they go to jail. This is why in Watergate, even though they were following orders, they were illegal. So you are culpable. And people are not going to go to jail and break the law just to help someone cover up something. So that's going to come out. And so, again, we're going to see this happen, and it's coming out, and we're going to see more and more of it. And we're going to see, I even noticed some people talking about what about Clinton and all this. Again, Clinton's not the president. Again, if people want to play into all of that, who knows? By the way, let me just say one thing about Clinton. I'll just say this one thing about Hillary Clinton, and I'm not a huge fan of any of them. Trump, Clinton, Obama, none of them. I'm really not. But I'll say this about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton sat in front of the last Benghazi hearing. It was investigated 8 times. They also investigated the uranium one and all that other stuff that people talk about with the Clintons and all the conspiracy theory stuff. Clinton sat in the last Benghazi hearing at the end of 2015 for 11 hours straight under oath and answered all the questions. 11 hours under oath, under threat of indictment if she lied, for 11 hours and answered all the questions. She also sat in front of the grand jury about the email scandal, threat of indictment, and answered all the questions truthfully. When has Donald Trump ever been under oath? See, this is why we see something very different about when you are under oath and sworn under oath. So, again, I will just say this. People who answer back with the things they don't like about Trump with, well, what about Clinton? let's get Trump under oath first, and then I'll listen to your Clinton arguments. Because Hillary Clinton has been under oath many times in her life. She's been sworn in as Secretary of State. She's been under oath in front of the office, in front of the Congress, and raised her right hand many times. Which means under threat of indictment, you're telling the truth. And you don't think that they couldn't go back and find things where they thought she lied and could prove lies, that they wouldn't be all over the place? So let's be real about this. And again, I'm just going to keep it real in that regard once all the Clinton stuff starts. Okay? Hillary Clinton has been under oath many times, and I've never seen Donald Trump raise his right hand yet. He didn't do it with Mueller. He's not doing it for Congress, and he can get in lie. It's not a crime to lie to the American people on Twitter, but it's a crime to lie to a federal agent. By the way, one of them that's really interesting was Sarah Sanders. They're going to bring Sarah Sanders before, perhaps, and say, when you said this, was that the truth or were you lying? See, Sarah Sanders has no problem lying in press conferences all the time in the press meetings. But when she was under oath with Robert Mueller and he asked what was the source of this thing that happened, she told the truth. And she said, I just made it up. It wasn't based on anything, this lie that I told about FBI, Mueller, and agents. I just made it up. Because she had to tell the truth then under threat of indictment. So there's a whole different thing when people talk about who's lying and who's not lying. Who's been under oath before? That's when you really see the truth come out. That's why even all these loyalists, when they were under oath, they told the truth. Because nobody's going to jail to protect. So let's keep it real, okay? I'm just doing my best to keep it real. And so I only brought up Hillary because someone in the chat did. Someone in the chat said, why people talk so much about Trump? What about Hillary and all Hillary's lies, Hillary's crimes, Hillary? I'm saying, here's the only thing about her. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it up because of that. Okay? She's been under oath many times in many circumstances. Anyway, so besides that heated political stuff, I want to talk about it first because it is really hot and this stuff is really coming up. But again, as we see now, as we go forward here, the 21st, 22nd, Jupiter has now gone back into Scorpio. This is where we had an unfortunate, terrible terrorist event in Sri Lanka over the weekend. And this horrible, bomb, exploding, killing more than 300 people. Again, it continues this theme that started a couple weeks ago and certainly last week with the Notre Dame fire. Again, whether it was terrorist or not, it's still this kind of, sort of desecration, you might say, of churches and, churches and ideologies being under pressure. Again, this was brought up when I spoke about this, that the Catholic Church, the Pope, and religions in general, both tolerance and intolerance. We can see both a tolerance for certain things and an intolerance for others. And it's not surprising that we have seen some now this, it appears to be a terrorist act in Sri Lanka. And this was obviously fueled by radical terrorism on Easter Sunday against Christians, right, in Sri Lanka. And that's just horrible. And this whole thing, sorry, I just want to look. Is really shown by this Jupiter at the very edge, again, of the Gandanta point, and the intolerance, the potential for the religious intolerance, but definitely showing that theme of Jupiter, Sagittarius, at the very edge of the Mula Gandanta here, the very edge. Again, we had the Notre Dame, it was a little bit forward. It was on the 16th, I think, or 17th. It was like here, I think. So it was a little further in. Again, look at how as it got closer to the actual Gandanta point, I believe it was on Easter Sunday, which was, I guess, the 21st. But that was in Sri Lanka, so it's about 12 hours. Between 2 and 4, 2 seconds, not 2 degrees, 2 seconds, right on the Gandanta point. And again, I just want to point something out here. This is Lahiri Ayanamsha. And again, I've experimented with Ayanamshas before. This is one of the reasons why I've come back to really just using Lahiri. Again, whether it's exactly perfect or whatnot, I'm not totally 100% sure. But it's definitely things like this where you see such precise, like seconds of art. Literally like hours before it moved into the next sign. And again, that's really close. And again, I would kind of expect this to be on the Sagittarius side of the Gandanta, particularly Mueller, which is also explosive and uprooting. Whereas Jeshta is a little less of that. Potentially. Now, again, there's definitely still some potential on either side of the Gandanta. So I'm just bringing this up as a point of inference that one of the things to know is that on the Mueller side of the Gandanta, it's fiery, which of course has more to do with explosiveness. Fire is explosive. Obviously, fire explodes. And again, the Mueller side, or I'm sorry, when we get into the Scorpio Jeshta side, now we're going to get the potential for things that aren't fiery but are more watery. Like perhaps things like, watery problems like hurricanes and monsoons and floods. We might expect to see that if we go forward. Here, this is all in the Gandanta here. 29, especially like within 1 degree. So look, this is how far we're going here. So even like, it's said to be like the last pada, but especially the last degree or so is where you really see it concentrated, like we're watching right now. You've been watching it. You've been seeing how much has exploded in this, and how much has shifted and changed with this Jupiter Gandanta. So this takes us through May 9th. So again, but if we keep Jupiter retrograde, and okay, now we're getting so this is about 2 degrees. So I would say at least for like another month. So between now and like the next month, we could definitely see some water related problems and issues and drownings and floods and monsoons and hurricanes where water is catastrophic and destroying some life. Saturn is also going to turn retrograde in this very soon. When did Saturn turn retrograde? Okay, he turns retrograde on the 29th. Or on the 30th. Is it 29th? No, 30th, let's say. So Saturn also turns retrograde at this point and starts tracking right along with Rahu exactly. You can already look and see that this Ketu Saturn are also tracking exact with each other. And that's also why we're seeing such potentially transformative, difficult times. Again, this was also talked about in my 2019 forecast. Again, it's these 3 things that all happen right around this time. Rahu goes into Gemini. Again, the day before that happened, the bar summary of the Mueller report was released. We also had the Brexit stuff start to happen. Or no, that was the following week. That was when Barr actually... Or no. This all happened at around the same time. It was like March 23rd. We had the 22nd Mueller report was released, and then a few days later, the reversal on Brexit and all of that started. Then we see, again, the stuff with the Notre Dame fire. We see the actual redaction of Mueller. And again, this is all Gemini, Sagittarius stuff. But while all this was happening, Jupiter Gandanta as well, Ketu Saturn have been right on top of each other for these last several weeks. You can see how close they are. Ketu just poked his head in, but now especially these last couple weeks, they're right on top of each other. That's why now it's been like whoosh, all of it's like lined up now right at this very precarious point. Right after Rahu goes into Gemini, Ketu and Saturn join. Jupiter goes retrograde right exactly on the Gandanta point. That's why you watch the exact degrees. Look at the exact degrees. Boom, boom, boom. And so now it's right here as I'm recording this today. As I started, this was 2:10 today. Jupiter's 29:59. Now it's like right back into Scorpio now for until November, right? Until the end of 2019. So Jupiter is back in Scorpio now to the end of the year, but he's still going to be in that Gandanta, I'd say, until the middle of May. Watch between now and the middle of May, things like, again, water problems, watery damage kind of stuff. Oh, someone just said, yep, flooding in Quebec as we speak. Pretty on point. Okay, so sad for that. But watch and see. We're going to see we might have a devastating monsoon season, flood season. And so that's a big part of what I think will be coming up as it relates to things like international relations. You know, I hope that some of the explosive terrorist kind of stuff is waning a bit. But I wouldn't be surprised if we have some kind of like international intrigue, especially like enhanced kind of like, you know, spying or like intrigue as it relates to like North Korea, like behind the scenes kind of treachery. Like, for example, negotiated treaties and, you know, we have all these things going on. By the way, there was just an election in Ukraine where an actor type of personality just got elected. This happened yesterday as well. Not to forget. I want to forget that this was yesterday. You know, again, we had that Sri Lanka attack, and then also in Ukraine, we have this actor guy who was just elected. So Scorpio has a lot to do with like behind the scenes, deception, treachery, trickery, and so especially things as, you know, again, as it relates to treaties and agreements, we might see some underhanded, you know, terrorist type of things that maybe don't have as much to do with explosions and fires and whatnot, but maybe we'll see some secret agreements exposed. You know, there's a lot of things going on right now. Particularly, there's a lot of, you know, again, because we have the Trump administration, all this stuff with like the Saudi government and the war in Yemen and all kinds of agreements between what the government's doing with North Korea or other secret agreements with Venezuela, and all of these secretive things that have been going on or that might be going on perhaps might come out, you know, in the political sphere, social sphere. We might see that kind of political maneuvering, not as much the explosive kinds of things, hopefully. Again, Scorpio and the Jeshta Gandanta has more to do with sort of these kinds of machinations around, you know, power and prowess and, you know, that kind of, you know, even like investigations and whatnot. We may find, in fact, there could very well be, because it's been talked about, that the Justice Department in the U.S. bar, maybe they go into investigating the investigators. So those of you who think I'm just this biased left-wing nutcase who only thinks Trump is wrong, maybe I have some good news for you. Maybe they'll start investigating Obama and how Obama blew it and the dodgy dossier, and they'll get into bringing some of these things out. And maybe, again, they've already found quite a bit. They already found where Strzok and Page, their text messages, again, maybe they'll investigate these kinds of things. I wouldn't be surprised. So again, this is all kind of Scorpio stuff where they investigate things that happen behind the scenes. Maybe we'll bring out some treachery and suspicion, at least some suspicious things around those investigations. Could very well be. It's certainly talked about, and it will certainly be talked about. Well, what about Obama, and what about the investigation itself, as an example? And so we might find that kind of intrigue in a lot of different ways. Perhaps even as it relates to, secret correspondence in Europe or in Asia with the Russians, maybe between Russia and Ukraine and this recent election or what have you. Again, it's hard to predict, but these kinds of things are definitely, I would say, more possible than not. Someone put Iran in question marks. Maybe I didn't say Iran, or maybe I misspoke about something. I don't know. But so if they're just asking about Iran, yeah, there's definitely, this sad beating of the potential war drums around Iran and the neocons who want to ratchet up the rhetoric, declaring the Iranian National Guard as a terrorist organization, and all kinds of political things behind the scenes. I want to understand that Scorpio is very political, and the nakshatra of Jyeshta is also quite political. Indra was a king and had a kind of political bent. Leo is very political, of course, that sign, but also Scorpio can be very political. Aquarius as well, but Aquarius is more about the people. But Scorpio definitely, and especially the Jyeshta part. So again, a lot of political jockeying for position could be big. So these are the few of the things I wanted to talk about here. And so again, very interesting, time right now as it relates to what might happen with impeachments and sad terrorist events. I have a feeling that these, terrorist events and explosive events. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say too was about the follow-up and the aftermath even to what happened in Notre Dame. Is, there had been a lot of protests in Paris already, the yellow vests rather, and you see the outpouring of the protest that recently erupted in Paris over finding all this money to rebuild Notre Dame. Well, what about bringing all this money together to help the people? So again, this kind of rising up, this kind of uprising, and has also been shown in the aftermath of what happened in Notre Dame as well. And so some people are asking questions, oaths in ninth house. Can I speak on it? It's kind of hard when someone says, can you speak on it? I don't know. It's not ninth house. Okay, maybe it has to do with oaths. Okay, I get it. That's what it is. I don't really know what else to speak about with it. So again, sometimes questions are a little hard because it comes at me like I don't really know. It's oath. Okay, so I know what you mean now, seventh house. Yeah, we take oath in the ninth house because it's related to God, if you mean that, because we take oath for a marriage partner. So, yeah. It's because it's before God, you would say. It's a formal religious ceremony. So, so people are talking about the Australian election, and so yeah, there's all kinds of and again, one of the reasons I talk about these things, it's not just the Bitcoin. I'm glad you mentioned. I'm going to do a thing on Bitcoin. Bitcoin has gotten some relief, particularly because of the things that I said last year was holding them back. So I did a lot of updates last year because of Bitcoin, and I predicted its real drop last year because of the nodes going through. You're welcome, Kala Purusha Astrology. I just wasn't sure what you meant. And the reason I'll just say real quick, the reason Bitcoin has had a bounce back is very simple because of the things I predicted last year. Because Rahu and Ketu have left the first house of Bitcoin. They've left it, and as soon as Rahu left, Bitcoin started to improve. But if you notice, Bitcoin has improved all the way up to like 5,000, which is not what people had thought. They thought it was going to bounce back up to, 50,000 and we'll all be rich. It's not that, and I'm not sure it's ever going to be that. I don't think it's ever going to be that. But it definitely saw an improvement. I'm going to do a dedicated video on Bitcoin, though. Y'all can go back and look at my previous Bitcoin videos. I have quite a few of them where I predict its drop. And the main reason I predicted it, especially if you look at the first one, has proven true the entire time. The entire time that Rahu and Ketu went through the first house of the Bitcoin chart, Bitcoin tanked. It dropped all the way down. And now Rahu and Ketu are out of the first house of the Bitcoin chart, so it has recovered. But again, I don't think it's going to be the fever dream that everybody thinks, at least not anytime soon. It might one day, but I've never thought that that's going to be the cryptocurrency that people think, or that it's going to ever pay off the way people think. Because at some point, it's going to wind up being fiat in its own way. Again, you can say it never can be because it's blockchain. I understand the issue. I'm not a dope. But it definitely can be somehow, can certainly be commoditized, and there's all kinds of things going on right now. So anyway, I don't want to get into that right now overall, but the general consensus is that the reason Bitcoin has shown some recovery, and almost immediate recovery, was when Rahu left the first house. And if I paid attention and cared, I would speculate and would have bought Bitcoin right at that time when it was right before Rahu left, because you'd have done a good job on your investment. You'd have bought it for about 35, and now it's about 55. So it would have been a pretty good ROI on Bitcoin. So I'll do a dedicated thing to Bitcoin here real soon. That's a good question. And so again, these are the things I wanted to really talk about. And again, in particular, because I see things positioning the way I had thought they would. Again, the big thing is, I said Rahu going into Gemini, and we're going to get the story. It's going to be the release of this Mueller investigation, and we're going to see what happened. We're going to get a report. It's not going to be a bunch of innocent, fake news, this, that, where we can just kind of turn it into something where nobody has to actually pay attention, and we can just spin our own theories. And again, we got the report released. It was just a few days. It was just last week. It was just Thursday that we saw the unredacted version. Before that, we didn't get the report. So again, it was a total political game. Attorney General Barr played a political game with it by coming out with that 4-page summary for 2 or 3 weeks so that the administration can claim no exoneration for 3 weeks without any context. And they wanted to do that long enough so that the paint would dry and people would make up their mind, but it ain't going to work. The real thing came out, and we saw what's in it. And now the real thing begins. They're going to have hearings. They're going to bring these people before Congress, and we're going to hear them say this stuff that happened. And that makes things look a lot different than some report that people choose to not look at if they don't want to believe it or whatever. It looks a lot different then, for better or worse. Maybe the people, and again, it probably will be the case that Trump's hardcore supporters, no matter what, no matter how many people come before them and say, yes, he asked me to do something that I know would have been obstructing justice, and I didn't want to commit a crime, so I didn't do it. No matter how many times people say that, some people just aren't going to care. They're going to say, no, Trump is right, and it's fake news or whatever. But most people aren't. Most people, seeing that over and over again, it's going to shift their perspective. Toward impeaching him? Who knows? I don't know. I don't even know if that's the best thing. I'm not thinking about it that way, but that's what's going to be coming out here. So, very interesting, transformative, wild times with all of these things lining up. It's not that often that we see so many things shifting. So, anyway, I hope this was enjoyable for you to listen to, and we'll take it from there. We'll talk to you soon.